Hi there, you're listening to the Business Storyteller Podcast by Piktochart, and welcome to Season 2. In this podcast, we speak with inspiring leaders who share their insights and experience in business and brand storytelling. Join us on this journey to learn how the art of storytelling can bring your businesses and brands to the next level. Hi there, and thank you for listening to the Business Storyteller Podcast. I'm your host, Wilson, and in today's episode, we are diving into how to win at email marketing to grow your brand. I want you to think about this scenario. Every day when you open your email inbox, you're bound to receive a number of marketing emails from brands that you follow. While some might merely be spammy and you delete them even without ever opening the emails, there are also some emails that you would open to read the content. Have you ever wondered what is the reason behind that behavior? Today, we're going to explore that further, and I'm delighted to be joined by Danni Roseman, who is a content marketing lead at Surfer. Surfer is a content intelligence tool that helps content teams to grow their brand, organic traffic, and revenue. At Surfer, Danni focuses primarily on blog management, copywriting, and growth marketing initiatives. She is passionate about email marketing and is experienced in growing, nurturing, and developing email lists. So you're in for a treat today. Hi, Danni. Welcome to the Business Storyteller Podcast, and it's great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Hi, Wilson. Thank you so much for having me. I'm ecstatic to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us in this episode, and I'm looking to learn more about winning at email marketing today. Before we begin, I'm fairly introduce you a bit, but I'm sure our listeners would love to know you better. So would you like to tell us more about your career journey and what led to your current role at Surfer?
Sure, of course. So I studied linguistics. I got a master's degree in linguistics, which led me to being a kindergarten teacher, of all things. I did that for a few years. And then I started a company with a friend to help women, especially women of color, move to Spain and live in Spain, which is where I've lived for the past 12 years. Although I am from Chicago, I'm based in Madrid. And when the pandemic started, I catapulted into EdTech of all sectors as a brand copywriter. And from EdTech, I moved into Surfer, where I work on the content and I work on a bit of everything, as you mentioned. But it was a strange journey from kindergarten teaching to an SEO SaaS, but I love it.
That's awesome. I'm sure that you have experience in all of those areas from education to marketing today. So it's great to be able to have a diversity of also your experience there. Well, let's get our conversation going today on the topic of email marketing. Now, based on your experience in email marketing, why do you think email marketing still plays an important role for growing brands and businesses at the present time, especially with the rise of other marketing channels such as social media, content marketing, and referral marketing? What is your take on that?
Yeah, so at any given moment, our phones are just a couple feet away. Yeah. So the reason I think that email marketing is so special is because we always have a direct line or direct access to people. And with that great responsibility, we have to treat that with a lot of empathy and a lot of care. So I think that's why email marketing has such a delicate balance. But apart from that, email marketing is one way that we can kind of have our little corner of the internet to talk to our people. Because what happens when Facebook crashes or Instagram goes down or you get locked out of your Facebook ads account or something like that happens? How can you still reach your people? And I think email marketing is that sweet spot.
Well, thank you for sharing those insights with us. You mentioned a bit about the present and also maybe a bit about the past about how email marketing has also grown to where it is today. Now, let's talk a bit about the future as well. Now, what do you think the future of email marketing would look like, perhaps in the next 10 years? And how do you think that will affect brands?
Yeah. So I really hope that email marketing keeps going down more of an empathetic pathway. I think that we have to keep in mind the circumstances under which people are reading our emails. I mean, imagine you've just opened your eyes for the first time today. Do you really want to read a subject that says, bye, 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 you need this, red light alert, or you're rushing to drop your kids off at school, or you're expecting good news from your email and you get all these notifications and pings. And I want to approach email marketing from a more empathetic way. And I think hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the future. If not, I also think there's going to be new ways to kind of stand out in the inbox. I don't know if you've seen people with like their animated profile pictures. I imagine that there's going to be some type of color coming in there in the future, something to just make your email stand out even more. But I hope, and I know what's not working, are sponsored emails that show up at the top. We don't want more of those. But I do think that we're going to find more visual ways to stand out in the inbox. And hopefully, like I said, more empathetic email marketing.
Yeah, that's a great observation that you put in there. And I concur with you as well. Like nowadays, the emails that I get, I am more attracted to emails that have a lot of GIF or certain visuals to be able to tell the story instead of just words. So hopefully we'll be able to see more of that usage as well for the future. Now, in relation to this on email marketing and maybe some of the best practices that you hinted at earlier, how has email marketing benefited Surfer as a brand?
Yeah, so Surfer's email marketing approach is value-driven and value-focused. We reach out when we actually have something to say. And I think that makes a big difference. We also have the ability to rely on things like in-app notifications, which I understand is not the same for all sectors. We also use Beamer as well. So that's another tool that we can use. We use Intercom for our emails as well. So I think that Surfer, we use email marketing specifically for product updates, but not changelog. Yeah. So it's kind of like when we have something really big that we want everyone to know about. Another thing that we really do for our email is that we segment extremely well. So we don't try to use the same message for our churned users versus our normal marketing base. And I think that's really important because the messaging should vary because people are at different levels or different stages of their journey with you. And in terms, I pulled some numbers just in case. Our open rate is about 12% higher than the industry standard according to MailChimp, which is really, really great. And because we're so selective about how we reach out and the way we reach out to individual groups, I checked our stats, and in the past 84 days, we've had 0% of our emails marked as spam, and we have less than a 2% unsub rate as well. So when I write our emails, I really do try to make it feel like I'm talking to the people. And again, it is like triple, sometimes quadruple the work because it's like churned, marketing base, already customers, like all of those things, but I think it makes a difference.
Thank you for being so transparent to share those numbers with us. And it's really very positive to also be hearing such an encouraging work that you're doing over at Surfer. You mentioned something about being selective in your email outreach. And in fact, like probably 30 minutes ago, I actually signed up to a newsletter from a brand. And one of the things that I saw right away is that the person said, "Oh, I will not be emailing you as often as you think I will be doing that. I will only email you when it is necessary." And I really appreciated that note because nowadays we get so much messages from brands. And I think like what you said, being selective, it's really, really helpful. So thank you for giving us an insight and also hearing an example of how it has benefited Surfer as a brand. Now, we also speak with a lot of business leaders here who are new or who are aspiring business leaders. And some of them are running like new brands and businesses. Maybe they haven't had the chance to even try out email marketing yet as part of their brand strategy. So what are some practical tips that you could offer to help them get started?
Yes, I love this question. So I guess my biggest tip would be to read the fine print. I know it's really tempting to go with big names. Like you're like, oh, it has to be MailChimp or, oh, it has to be what have you, just because it worked for a friend or a company that you use or you follow has used this brand or this company for email marketing. I think that reading the fine print to know what do you actually need? How much can you afford to dedicate to email marketing? Because some of these platforms will charge you based on how many emails you send. Some will charge you on how many people you're sending them to. So just because it sounds familiar and like you like the branding does not mean it's going to be the perfect fit. So make sure that you're not overspending, especially if you're just starting out. And my other tip is just to be aware that 100 like diehard people who open your emails is way better than 1,000 people who are just kind of meh. I think the idea of like, we need to grow our list. It has to be huge. People can tout huge email lists with open rates of like 3-4%. It's not always about how big the list is. It's about how engaged your people are. So I would encourage you to not focus so much on how large it is, but focus on stats more like click rate and open rate. Well, open rate is like the beginning. Yes. And then we want to get into click rate, especially if you have a clear CTA. So I think don't be discouraged about how large your list is. Focus on nurturing it and cultivating it, and get those other stats up besides the number of people on the list.
Yeah, I think those are really practical tips. I particularly like the first one that you mentioned about reading the fine print as well, because like you said just now, email marketing can sometimes be expensive and we can tend to overspend, especially if we use certain tools. So it's great that you actually mentioned that right off from the bat so that business leaders would be able to actually properly think about it and probably find some wisdom and comparing the different tools out there to find out what works best for them. So yeah, thank you for giving us a good beginner's guide and tips to also how to get started on email marketing. Now, we talk a bit about the benefits of email marketing, and you have given us some practical steps as well. Now, let's talk a bit about the challenges as well. What do you think are some challenges to expect when it comes to email marketing, especially when it's part of a brand's strategy?
Yeah, I think number one, finding your voice and knowing what to talk about. I think that's the biggest challenge. You open the template. What do you say? How do you start? Like, how do you say, hey there? Do you say hello? Do you say greetings and salutations? Like, finding your voice and knowing what to talk about, I think, is the biggest challenge. Creating a balance between ask and nurture. So you're going to hear me talk about like empathetic email marketing, like until the cows come home. Like, I'm really big on it because I respect people's time. And I know having access to someone when they're literally in bed, it's something that I'm really careful with, So I think because email marketing, we say marketing, we think marketing, okay, it's connected to sales. So I'm telling them something because I want them to do something for me. I want them to buy something from me. And we don't focus so much on giving. We don't focus as much on giving as we should. So finding that balance between ask and nurture. For me, I'd like to do a 3-to-1 ratio whenever possible. So 3 gives, 1 ask, just to kind of make sure that people are getting value from the list. And yeah, creating your own style, creating your own voice, and also being consistent. I understand. I like metrics when it comes to email marketing. Don't ask me to do math outside of email marketing because I will not. But it can be really discouraging because I kind of see these stats like a GPA. For some reason, you have 1 good email and it goes up just a little bit. Your open rate, just a little nudge. But you have 1 bad email and your open rate drops and you're just like, oh, I quit. It's useless. I can't do it. So not only just finding what to talk about, but being consistent, even when you may think it's not working. It's kind of a long haul type of game.
Yeah. Thank you for outlining those real challenges that we are bound to face in email marketing. And I like how you emphasize on the empathetic marketing as well with your technique, which is 3 gives and 1 ask. I think that is great because in the end of the day, like what you said earlier, it's about talking with your audience as well. And I think by doing that, you actually create engagement. People would be more interested to open up your email. So thank you for sharing some challenges that we can consider about as we begin email marketing. So let's talk a bit about other tips as well. Now, you have been doing email marketing for some time now. It's your niche, it's your expertise. What would be your top 3 tips for winning at email marketing?
Yes. Clean out your list. I understand that it may be painful when you're like, but I don't want to get rid of people or I don't want my numbers to go down, but it's super important because similar to what we think about social media, when you have bots that are just on your list, kind of just pulling down your stats, I mean, not that people are bots in this case of email marketing, but what I'm saying is if you're trying to continue adding value and there are people on your list who are no longer engaging, number one, don't take it personally because people's needs and their interests change, So it's okay to clean out your list. I try to either send out a survey first, just a couple questions like, hey, remember me? Remember you signed up for this? You still interested? If not, no problem. If you're interested in something else, let me know. And if they don't respond to the survey, if I realize they're still not engaging, then it's okay to remove them from your list. They'll probably thank you in their heads. and also your metrics will also thank you because if they're just kind of there taking up space and they're not actually engaging, you're pulling down your numbers anyway. Apart from cleaning out your list, segment as much as you can. Please segment. And it really helps because, for example, you can segment and you can send out emails according to time zone. Being able to send emails, if you know where people are based, if you know their time zone, like being able to send them in a time that's appropriate for them, that they'll actually be able to read them. If you know, for example, their sector, if you have some industry news that is specific to their sector that be relevant, you can send that exactly to those people. It's the closest we can get to tailoring our email and making it kind of custom fit. So when you segment and you're able to put people into these categories and put people into these groups, you can tailor your message and you can resonate more with them. That's what I would say.
Nice. Yeah, I like the part where you mentioned about segmenting it. I think even in Piktochart with our email marketing, we have seen the benefits of segmenting our emails to different users that we have. And I think that's one for also business leaders to consider as they start working on their email marketing. Thank you for sharing those 3 tips with us. Now we're at our final question now. And I'd love to also hear your thoughts on maybe the favorite examples of brands and businesses that you're following, whom you think are nailing it at email marketing.
Yeah. So I really like, his name is Ed, and it's Ed from VeryGoodCopy. I like Ed because in his preview text, he puts a word count. And I just think that is the most beautiful example of empathetic marketing, because it's like, do I have time to read 512 words? Yes, I do, Ed. I do. And I'm going to read it. And not only that, he puts like 330 words to like triple your open rate, or 330 words to develop a new skill, something like that to kind of hook you in as well. And you know what to expect when you open it. It's not like a bait and switch situation. A lot of email marketing, it has psychology to it. It's like, I'm going to trick you to open this. And we don't want to do that, And I think Ed does a really good job of just being really transparent and concise. I also really like Hannah Baxter. She has a newsletter called The Anxiety Beer. And I think she does a really great job of storytelling in her emails. And it's not at the point where the email list is monetized, and you can tell. And it just is, it's all give. It's all give, and it's all storytelling. And it's just really beautiful and rich when I read her writing, and they're not too long either. And an example of like a corporate newsletter, kind of corporate, like bigger, is The Hustle, because I always learn something new. I could easily go down a rabbit hole of just like so many different directions I'm being pulled in. I try to take them in sections, but I think The Hustle does a really good job, and you can tell they have a really hardworking, comprehensive team behind them. It's not just one person writing that newsletter.
Yeah, those are really great examples of individuals and brands you mentioned. I follow The Hustle too, so I can definitely resonate with that they're really great in their email marketing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing so many valuable and helpful insights with us today, Danny. I've certainly gained much more learning about email marketing from you in this episode, and I'm sure it has also benefited our listeners. So thank you for being transparent to share your experiences and lessons with us today. Now, as a wrap up to this episode, I'd love to ask you some fun questions to help our listeners to learn about what inspires you. So are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
So my first question for you is this: what is your favorite movie?
This is definitely going to date me, like to age me, but I'm a big fan of all of those comedies from like the mid 2000s, like Forgetting Sarah Marshall and like Superbad and Get 'Em to the Greek. I really love those comedies.
Nice. Those are really good ones. What about your favorite book?
I'm going to have to go with Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes or Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I was a literature major and I set like a reading goal of 3 to 4 books a month. This was one of the hardest questions on this list, I'm going to tell you, but choosing those top 2 for now.
Yeah, I think those recommendations should be taken seriously by our listeners, especially coming from you. And my final question for you is this: if you're not doing what you're doing today, what do you envision yourself doing?
I would imagine myself curating pop-up dinners and lunches with plant-based food, just to show people that plant-based food is not boring and it's actually colorful and vibrant and full of life. And I would just curate these experiences with like no phones allowed, outside, ideally at tables where conversation and food were the absolute centerpiece.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great idea, and hopefully you'll be able to pursue that sometime on the side as well. Yeah, that was fun, and I trust our listeners have certainly enjoyed knowing you better as well, and also what inspires you as a person. Now, before we conclude, how can our listeners reach you or stay connected with you?
Yes, so you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Danni Roseman, and I'm also all over Surfer's websites and videos. I have a masterclass with Surfer as well, the SEO Writing Masterclass version 2.0, where you can learn a bit more about SEO in a way that is relatable and chill.
That's awesome. Well, be sure to also leave the link to your LinkedIn and also to Surfer's website for our listeners to check out in the show notes. So you can also follow them and, of course, subscribe to their newsletter because you'll be able to see examples of how they're doing email marketing and they're also winning at it. Once again, thank you, Danni, for coming on this episode of the Business Storyteller Podcast. It was a pleasure to be speaking to you. That's all for today's episode, and until the next one. We hope you find this episode valuable. If you'd like to hear more, be sure to follow our podcast on Spotify or check out piktochart.com/podcast to see the rest of our episodes. The Business Storyteller Podcast is brought to you by Piktochart, an intuitive platform for visual creation and video editing. Join more than 8 million people who are already using Piktochart to enhance their storytelling through infographics, presentations, and videos. Find out more at piktochart.com and sign up for a free account to get started. Once again, thank you for listening to the Business Storyteller Podcast, and we'll catch you at the next one.